We recognize that CVUUS gathers on land seized from the Western Abenaki people by European colonizers. We respect the Abenaki spiritual relationship to the land and waters of the Champlain Valley. We are committed to building a peaceful and more just relationship with them and to promoting knowledge about their history and culture. Good morning. Welcome to CVUUS, the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. Welcome to those of you who are here, and welcome to those of you who are online. Today's service is brought to you by the color yellow. If you remember the Sesame Street, they used to be sponsored by letters and numbers. You know, our favorite in our family was the letter B. Muppets would sing, letter B, whisper words of wisdom, letter B, letter B. Yellow, I think we have a slide, Richard, for the welcome. Well, anyway, maybe it'll appear. But yellow is for the forsythia and the daffodils that have emerged and proliferated in the last week or so. They are so hardy, present in the most unlikely places, the daffodils anyway. What are those daffodils doing there? And soon enough they're gone, but they have served their purpose. They have tided us over, gotten us through the stick and mud season and dank April showers. They are true harbingers, a word I love to say. Then soon enough, May shows up, the best month of the year, exhilarating, full spring. Thank you, yellow. Next week, our service will be sponsored by green. I'm Karl Lindholm, today's worship associate, and I'm assisting our interim co-minister, Tricia Hart. The theme of today's service is taking care of what you love. This is a good time to adjust your phone if you haven't already. If you're visiting, please sign the guest book in the foyer so we can send you news of activities and events that enrich our time together. If you have a milestone or passage, a yellow card that you would like to share, please place it in the offering basket when it comes around. And all, do stay after the service for snacks and friendly conversation downstairs in the Ann Ross Fellowship Room. While there's no time for all ages today, if there are children here, there is religious exploration in the Fenn House.
You and I did not talk about this, but as I was driving here today, I thought, the color of the day is yellow. The call to worship this morning is from a poem by Denise Levertov. You may have heard it before. But we have only begun to love the earth. We have only begun to imagine the fullness of life. How could we tire of hope? There is so much in bud. How can desire fail? We have only begun to imagine justice and mercy, only begun to envision how it might be to live as siblings with beast and flower, not as oppressors. Surely our river cannot already be hastening into the sea of non-being. Surely it cannot drag in the silt all that is innocent. Not yet, not yet. There is too much broken that must be mended, too much hurt we have done to each other that cannot yet be forgiven. We have only begun to know the power that is in us if we would join our solitudes in the communion of struggle. So much is unfolding that must complete its gesture. So much is in bud. Let us light our chalice.
As Tricia lights the flaming chalice, symbolic of Unitarian Universalism, please read along with me these words on the screen. Now, I realize that the way we're organized today, this is a little bit stiff-neck territory for people over here, because it's not in your order of service. And this is written by Tom Goldsmith. Do you know Tom Goldsmith by any chance?
I think I knew him at one point.
He's a retired minister at Salt Lake City. UU minister
That's
in
where
Salt
I
Lake
knew
City.
him,
Yes. Okay, we ready? Symbol of light and knowledge, symbol of warmth and freedom, we light this chalice as a symbol of our faith. Here we gather to celebrate hope and the infinite possibilities of love.
Number 299. It can be I don't know, a dangerous thing to do to say to Ronnie and to me, ooh, we have a little extra space in the service, so we could add an extra bit of music or two. That's what today is, and you may already have noticed, and if you haven't, you'll have a few more songs to think about this. All of these songs are about love. All of them are about love. And there's some of my favorites. So since we're going to be talking about love today, I hope that you will notice that, and we can maybe talk about it later. And here's an opportunity. I just want to tell you some of the ways that you, whoever you are, whether you've been here for 38 years or you just walked in today, can be involved. There is the first of a series of what are we calling them? Like sessions, not classes, sessions, gatherings, meetings, whatever we call them. We just don't want to make it sound too much like school. We're calling Getting to Know You. This today's session starts at noon and will be downstairs in the Blue Room, and I will be leading it along with some members of the welcoming team. So if you are a new person, and you would like to know more about Unitarian Universalism and this congregation, and maybe you'd like to learn something about what membership is, this is the place for you. If you are a not at all new person, but you just have a bunch of questions, or you wonder what the heck I'm about, or Christina, or you'd like to hear more about Unitarian Universalism, this is also the place for you. So please come if you can. Part 2 of this 2-part program will happen in person next Sunday, same time, same place, and it will be a chance to learn more about this congregation. There are also kind of sort of identical sessions on Zoom for those who can't be here in person this Wednesday and next Wednesday. So all of this is on the website. You can find out the details, but we hope that you will take a chance to learn more and maybe meet some other people. And though I didn't tell her when I was going to invite her up to do this, I'm inviting up Carrie Duquette to tell us about the special congregational meeting tonight.
Thank you. So you may have seen an email about 10 days ago now, announcing a special congregational meeting. So this beautiful sanctuary that we're in, the members of our congregation built together, and there's some upgrades and some maintenance that we're considering. The facilities team has worked so very hard to pull together some quotes and some bids and some next steps, and they will have some information for us tonight. There will be an email coming to you shortly. One of the things we realized in our transition is that communications are a pathway that people have actively identified as, like, we could do this differently, and it's in the works. So I'm sorry to say that this is coming out to you late, but I'm excited to say that we know why, and it's an issue we've already been, not me, the very amazing staff has already been working on. But you'll have some informational workbooks, or really Word docs about the projects, and then presentations tonight at our meeting. If you can, it's on Zoom. It's the same link as the service. That'll be in this email as well, but if the service link is on the front page. We would very much love to see you. We'll need quorum to have the vote, so your voice is important in so many ways, but we can't even consider it if you're not there. So thanks so much. Oh, sorry, 7 p.m. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you.
Thank you, Carrie. I'm going to tell you the secret. The reason that it used to be possible to send out messages off hours and over the weekend is because Reverend Barnaby had ways of doing that. And Christina and I have, at least I, have chosen not to learn those ways. So the hero here is Jess, who is actually sending out the message this afternoon, and we are working hard with the with a group of people who are thinking about communications in a whole bunch of ways. So thank you. Thank you all, and thank you, Carrie. It is a stewardship month. This is our time to think about this congregation and its future and supporting it and why it matters to all of us. And so we're having a series of people speak at the Sundays in April to talk about what they think about that particular topic of this congregation. And Jean Terwilliger is here, right there, and is going to come up and do a testimonial. Thank you, Jean.
And this is a combination testimonial and introduction to our donee of the month, of which I am a member of the board. But it will all connect. So I am really appreciative of this congregation, and I have been a member for about 26 years now, shortly after I moved to Middlebury. And a few years, maybe in the first 5 years after I moved here, when we were up in the building at the corner of the street up here, there were a couple of things that were happening. We had a number of different ministers, and we had also lay-led services, and a couple of people spoke who really had a big impact on me and the trajectory of my life. And those include Steve Trombulak and Rich Wolfson, and also Steve Meyer, who talked a lot about their impact, their how they felt about the natural environment and how we should be treating it and living in it. And I really appreciated their thoughtfulness and their search for truth and meaning. And it helped me realize always happens to me. Their words helped me realize that it was time for me to step out and strive to create architecture that aligned with my values. And I've been working on that ever since. And so people have been talking a lot in the last few weeks about what makes this congregation sticky to them. And so I would say, I've said, choir and RE and the facilities team, but it's really the people and everything that people here are doing in their own lives. And so the other thing that was happening at that time in this congregation was that we were outgrowing our old space. And a number of people decided that it was time to start a committee to look at options for what we're doing. And this really became joining that team really became my main landing space here for like the next 8 years as a young architect. I had spent most of my time drafting, not organizing projects or speaking in front of groups. And CVUUS really gave me a safe place to stretch myself and try out and build new skills while feeling like I was making a difference. And so, circling back now to CEAC, the Climate Economy Action Center of Addison County is really an outgrowth of a number of the members of this congregation who helped found that group, including Steve Meyer. The mission of CVUUS is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in Addison County in a timely and equitable manner while supporting a just transition to a healthy and sustainable local economy. That is a mouthful. So, what does that mean? For the last 15 months, CVUUS has been pulling together the resources and staff needed to launch a new Energy Navigator program to connect Addison County residents to a clean energy future. What does that look like for you? It means that if you would like to reduce your home's fossil fuel use or carbon footprint, but have been confused about how to do that, or what resources are available to help you, you will have a local resource to call on, created from the shared knowledge and social networks in each of our communities. It also means that we need your help. Following the stewardship theme of love in action, you can put your love of the earth, and in celebration of tomorrow's Earth Day, into action this year by contributing to the basket this morning, and as you are able, and also by volunteering your time to help your neighbors make progress in this critically important issue and create community in the process. So I thank you, all of you, for what you are able to do.
Your gifts to the offering this morning to be shared with this congregation and with CVUUS will now be very gratefully received. Thank you, Jean. Please feel free to stand and greet one another with your eyes and your smile.
The yellow cards are how we acknowledge and share important events and concerns in our lives with one another. I have only one yellow card, and it's from Reverend Tricia and Reverend Christina. We made a mistake. Last week we said, not me, I didn't make it. Last week we said Tom Morgan would be CVUUS's first ministerial intern. But, as many, underlined, of you told us, he will actually be the second. Amy Zucker interned here in 98-99 and is remembered fondly. She is now the minister in Palo Alto, California. And if you recall, she did a remote service for us when we were all remote. Now, no doubt there are other milestones and passages, joys and concerns that reside in our hearts and minds today. And Tricia will provide us with a moment of reflection.
Take a breath. Notice where you are. Feel yourself in your chair, in this room, in this hour. As we take a moment, first in some shared words and then in some shared silence, a moment to reflect, to think, perhaps to pray. I chose this as a reading. It's a short, perhaps a prayer, called Dependence Day by John Daniel, and it's from his book of Earth, New and Selected Poems. Dependence Day. It would be a quieter holiday. No fireworks or loud parades, no speeches, no salutes to any flag. A day of staying home instead of crowding away. A day we celebrate nothing gained in war, but what we're given. How the sun's warmth is democratic, touching everyone. And the rain is democratic too. How the strongest branches in the wind give themselves as they resist and give themselves. How birds could have no freedom without the planet's weight to wing against. How Earth itself could come to be only when a whirling cloud of dust pledged allegiance as a world, circling dependently around a star, and the star blossomed into fire from the ash of other stars. And once, at the dark zero of our time, a blaze of revolutionary light exploded out of nowhere, out of nothing, because nothing needed the light, as the brilliance of the light itself needs nothing. Let us rest in our silence together.
Okay. I invite you to sing hymn number 296 with us now. The choir is going to intone the little Latin chants before and after. So yes, please sing with us.
When Karl and I talked about today's service, I asked him what I often ask the worship associates I'm working with, which is, do you have anything you'd like to say about this? And he did. Karl's reflection.
Yes, he was encouraged to do so. Richard, can we get that slide up of the two old men? There we are. Now, this is a reflection. It's about these two handsome old men and a trip we took together recently, and I think it reflects giving and receiving, taking care of what you love, the what might be friendship and who you love. Oh, good, he took it down. All right. I didn't want you to be so distracted. As I said to Richard, the animal magnetism would probably be very, very distracting. Jim. That fellow with me is Jim. Jim and I met in 1969, standing in formation at an Army Reserve meeting in Auburn, Maine. He had graduated, 1969. He had graduated from Bates College and was student teaching in a junior high there in Lewiston that I had attended as a kid. He had played on the basketball and baseball teams at Bates the same years I had played on those teams at Middlebury. We both went to Fort Polk, Louisiana for basic training, and Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio for training as medics. As my first teaching job was in Maine, we attended reserve meetings there in Auburn. Jim had a serious Bates girlfriend, Candy, and they married right after college. I was in the wedding. They settled in Maine, both teachers. Candy taught for years in an alternative public high school for troubled teenage girls, and Jim taught phys ed and coached high school basketball and baseball. I had family in Maine, but never failed to visit or stay with Jim and Candy. There are no two people with whom I was more comfortable. Gene, this is your fault. Candy was diagnosed with throat cancer 4 years ago. She was a smoker. Jim was her essential caregiver. She died last August. In the fall, Jim undertook all the practical arrangements after her death, the paperwork, the downsizing. He and their children and grandchildren visited Candy's hometown of Presque Isle, Maine, and spread some of her ashes in places of special meaning. I knew he was suffering. Jim then decided to go back to St. Simon's Island in Georgia for the 3 months in the winter, as that was where he and Candy spent winters for the last decade and a half. I worried about Jim a lot. He was staying busy, but I knew he was grieving. What would he be doing in Georgia, away from family and friends in Maine? I thought it would be painful and full of memories of his and Candy's life there. So we hatched a plan. In March, I would fly to Jacksonville. He would pick me up at the airport, and we would drive to Central Florida to watch baseball. Then we would drive back to St. Simon's for a week. We would take the baseball cure. I was thinking this was something I could do for Jim. Keep him company. Take his mind off this great loss. Then in February, I got sick. I got pneumonia. I missed 6 Sunday services. 3 days in the hospital, then recovering at home under the care of my doctor, Dr. Millier. And I won't go into, she's a very effective doctor, but you have to do what she says. And I did. While in the South with Jim, I made it to go on the trip. When I was in the South with Jim, I relaxed. I breathed. I slept. We got up in the morning, had plenty of sleep, found a place to have breakfast, went to a ball game, then found a place to have dinner, watched basketball, March Madness at night, then repeated the process the next day. Then in Georgia, we followed the same routine. The ball games were replaced by long, slow walks on the beach in the afternoon. I'm not sure I have another friend with whom I might be compatible 24 hours a day for nearly 2 weeks. It turns out, evidently, neither one of us snores, which was a blessing. And our trip included a 3-day drive back in his car to New England. When I got back to Middlebury, I was well, physically well, and entirely refreshed. My purpose in going on this trip was to be a support to Jim as he grieved his tremendous loss, to be a good friend. I think that was the case, but it turns out that it was not in the least one-sided. Jim provided me with what I had a great need for too. To you I give, from you I receive. Blessed be.
A few weeks ago, on a Sunday, after the service, there was a congregational conversation. You know about this probably, that the Council on Ministry decides that there's something important to talk about. And so some of us do gather and do that. I looked it up. I believe that the title that Alan gave to that congregational conversation, with a little bit of consultation with me, was, "Who are we?" A cosmic question that was about CVUUS, this congregation, now and in the future. So we were sitting over there, and Alan handed me the microphone, and I introduced the topic a little bit, kind of, sort of, by saying something which was true, which is that while I had been away in March and visiting lots of other UU congregations, had a question that kept popping up in my brain with perhaps an unusual vocabulary word in it when you relate to the topic of religious community. But I was wondering what business we're in, Unitarian Universalism. What's our product? My father would have approved of that question. So I said that, and then I said to the whole group, what do you have to say about what you think we're doing here? What is the purpose of this congregation? And here were just some of the answers. This congregation exists to provide spiritual nurture of every person who walks through the door. This congregation functions as a magnet for other liberal, like-minded people to be together. This is a place to nurture children and youth and families of all kinds. This congregation exists to connect with other congregations, Unitarian Universalist and other religious groups and agencies like SEAC and many others that are working to bring more justice into the world, and to provide a meeting place for many of those groups who meet here in this wonderful building, and opportunities for the people of this congregation and more to get involved in that work. This is a place of learning and a place of teaching. This is a place of care and compassion and friendship, among other things, supporting those who are navigating life's transitions. This is a place of music, lots of music, of choir with, I don't know whether I've said this to you yet, choir, but these are definitely the most distinctive choir stoles I have ever encountered in my life and there are so many of you, so you show up on Sundays. But it's not just the choir, it's also contra dances and open mic nights, and in April, these little noontime Wednesday concerts and other performances. This is a place that practices and is committed to radical hospitality. Not just those who were already inside, but welcoming those who perhaps wouldn't expect to be welcomed here. This is a place of joy and celebration and beauty with like-minded and unlike-minded people. This is a place that attends to all that is of worth. So I was listening to all of these wonderful purposes as the people spoke up in that circle, and it struck me as a pretty good summary of this congregation's business or purpose, as well as quite a daunting list, especially because it's an always changing and evolving list, and always certainly incomplete. So a few weeks before that congregational conversation, a bunch of us were struggling to find the right theme for this year's stewardship campaign, and for a while we thought it might be called Love at the Center. And Hannah spoke up, Hannah, there you are, and said, well, that's a nice idea, but it's not quite enough. It's like a lot of the way we talk about our congregation. It's just a little too squishy and vague. Pretty sure you said that word, and I agree with you. So, love at the center, and that reminded me of, many of you remember the theme, the movement that was originally known as Standing on the Side of Love, and it became Side with Love. And you remember the bright yellow t-shirts, like intensely yellow t-shirts and sweatshirts and hats? I don't know whether you know, but I've been told by people in very far away parts of this country who learned what Unitarian Universalism is by the people who wore yellow shirts. They called us the love people. I kind of love that. And then, just this week, I was at a minister's retreat, and our facilitator, Reverend Jake Morrill, was just wonderful, and he asked really good questions like this. When one of us would say, you know, what I really want to do in my life, in my ministry, what I really want to do is this. And Jake would say, yeah. How could anybody tell that that's what you want? What are you doing in your life, in your ministry, in who you are, to make it evident to the world that that is what you want? Actions. I was also reminded of a device, an icebreaker, a something or another that consultants have used in the past, I think especially stewardship consultants, but probably lots of others. The prompt is, and I do want you to think about this, but not so much that you miss the rest of the sermon, so you could write it down if you need to. The prompt is, our congregation is a place where people blank gather. There are lots of possibilities. The ones that we don't necessarily like to think that if you ask children this, they will tell the truth and say things like, our congregation is a place where boring things happen, or where we're constantly eating together, or where people talk about money all the time, or lots of good things. So the theme that was chosen, and our theme this year, is love in action, which is not so squishy. It's pretty real. In my experience, when Unitarian Universalists are asked, what do you value most about your congregation, which is another way of saying, why do you go? Why have you stuck? Why did you join? Why do you contribute money? People's answers tend to be about good feelings and good people. The community is loving and accepting and interesting, challenging ideas in the air, forgiving, we hope, and safe. These are true and good things. But when we consider, I think, what a congregation actually does, assuming that we're doing what we should be doing, our purpose is also, I believe, about helping us all make choices. For example, what's the best choice I can make between this option that's right in front of me that will be comfortable and safe and familiar, or another option right in front of me that might stretch me and my soul. Maybe even help me believe in a society where all people can be comfortable and safe. Or even more specifically, a choice. How shall I interact with this person I dislike, or disagree with, or even fear? This person who is coming toward me right now. With what part of myself will I choose to respond? The fearful, judgmental part that makes me feel justified in not making eye contact? Or the open-hearted part of me that tries to believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person? These are, I would say, religious questions, religious and spiritual choices, part of what our congregations are about. Whenever love in action is actually happening, those choices in front of us are almost always uncomfortable, at least a bit, at least for a moment. And that's what congregations are for, to help people get to that slightly uncomfortable spot and not run away. So how does a congregation teach its people about bringing more love in action into the world? Not just how to love another person, or not just that, but also inviting people to believe in themselves enough to try something they don't already know they can do. When I think back about the 40 years that I've spent as a Unitarian Universalist, that's what Unitarian Universalism has consistently done for me. Invite me to do something that I have no certainty I know how to do, or that I know how to do well, and to try it anyway. Perhaps you, too, have had those experiences. I want to tell you just a couple of stories, real, true stories, that I've witnessed. I didn't cause any of these to happen. Watching congregations teach people how to love in a way they didn't know they could. One of those stories is about compassion. It's about a congregation in Ohio where I served for 3 years, and where there was a growing, beginning to get larger and more broad in its understanding of its work, the caring team, the care network. I don't remember what we called it. You know, the group of people who takes care of other people. There was a woman, one of the reasons that that group was in transition is that the woman who had run that group for years, nobody could tell me how, was no longer really able to do that. In fact, she wasn't always at church. She was failing in some ways. She was very proud and in no way asked for help or really didn't want anyone to visit her for any reason. And somewhat reluctantly, actually, was welcoming the new leadership in that group that had been really her creation. And it went on like that for a while until the call came that the police had actually picked up this woman who was wandering in her neighborhood and didn't know where she was. She didn't know where she lived, and when she got home, I don't quite remember how these phone calls happened, but the new lead person in the caring network was there to meet with her and heard some of what this woman had been going through as her mind had left her, as her health was failing, as her husband was unable to support her in the way that he had. So the new lead of this wonderful growing team said, let's call this woman Doris. Doris, what do you need from us? And Doris said, I want to be able to come to church. That was it. And so that team of people organized itself to make it possible for Doris to come to church every single week for the rest of her life, which was only a few months long. And that was quite a production, because it meant going to her house, helping her get out of her house, helping the navigation into a car and into a wheelchair, and somebody else meeting that car in the parking lot on schedule and holding the door and walking in with her, and someone else who figured out where Doris was going to sit and staying with her for the whole service and coffee hour. All the normal stuff that we think about, that we don't even think about doing when we come to church. That congregation found a way not to solve all of Doris's problems, but to help her be part of the community that was hers. And it was pretty stunning to watch for me. And one other story, also from that same congregation in Ohio. I had the privilege of working with the Reverend Chris Long for the 3 years that I was there. Chris is a black, gay, Tennessee person who is one of the leaders now of our association in racial justice work. And what we asked Chris to do was to help people in the congregation put their love in action, actually do things to demonstrate that they cared. And Cleveland is a greater metropolitan area which offers an unnumbered ways that people can get involved and try to bring a little racial justice into a very divided community. Chris invited, there was a person in one of the small cities in the Cleveland area who was, it doesn't matter the details, but there was a conflict between the city who had arrested this person and then not released him for a very long time, and that person's family and the city. So Chris invited people to do what other groups were doing, which was to go and be there at a city council meeting and try to bring up this topic, because the city council was avoiding it. A whole group of people, 15, 18 people from the congregation were there and sat in the city council room. It was a very, very tense and very loud meeting, and none of our people were shouting, but there was a lot of other shouting in the room until the city council kicked out all of the visitors. You may not be in this room anymore, so they went out and sat in the lobby of the city hall in this small city, where they sat down rather than leaving the building. They sat down, and Chris was with them, and it seemed like a good thing to do. You could sit there and just sing or chant, be present, not disappear. And then the group was surrounded suddenly by an entire SWAT team of riot police. And the people from West Shore, the church that I was a part of, where Becky Strum also was some years ago a part of, talked about this experience later and said, the first thing that a lot of them thought was, I didn't think I was going to get arrested today. I am not sure I know how to do that. I'm not sure who's going to feed my dog tonight. I'm not sure I'm brave enough to do this. All those kinds of thoughts that go through one's heads, not to mention just terror at being surrounded by people with helmets and shields and very large guns. Everybody was fine. Everybody got to go home. Nobody got arrested that day. But what I was moved by and would not have thought to do, that Chris taught me about, is he invited that group of people to get together a few days later and talk about and process what that experience was like for them, and how they encountered parts of themselves that they did not expect, that they did not know, and helped them help each other figure out how to understand what had happened and be ready for the next time that it might happen again. I feel like I had nothing to do almost nothing to do with either of those stories, or dozens and dozens of other times that the congregations that I've been privileged to be a part of found a way to learn something, to try something that people didn't know they knew how to do, and then help each other get through it. So they would then be ready for the next thing, the next time that love could be put into action. It happens all the time. It happens here. And I'm not always sure that when we do things like have a stewardship campaign like we're in the middle of, we don't necessarily talk about that kind of active love work that we do as congregations, because we focus on, the big parts of the budget and the problems if we don't get enough money. We focus on that. And I wonder what would happen if we thought about the ways in which our congregations teach us how to love in active ways. So I do want to say the stewardship campaign so far, half over, a little bit more than half over, is going well. Mary, did you bring that poster? Do you want to hold it up so people can see it? So this is the lovely design that you've seen of Love in Action, and all those multicolored stickers represent pledges that have been made already. And, here we go. Mary gave me the numbers. 46 households have pledged already. That results in just over $160,000 committed, including more than $1,000 in the Got You Covered cushion campaign. 46 pledges, 4 of which are new. And overall, because some of us are looking at this, if you add up what those 46 households gave last year for various reasons and compare those totals, in fact, we are ahead. We are ahead of where we would be with last year's totals. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. It's also a great thing that all these circle suppers have happened. Jean, how many is it? Is it 8 altogether? 8 circle suppers, all of them full. Some happened, some are happening this weekend and next weekend. And then there were, I don't know, I tried to count and I lost count. There were there were 50 people, good. I was going to say 40 something, but last Sunday with the circle supper lunch, whatever it was wonderful. It was great. And what happened was that people sat around tables with people they didn't know and talked about this congregation and talked about themselves. And it was a wonderful thing. So I want to say, if you have not yet made a pledge for the coming year, do that, okay? Please. Even if what you're going to commit is the same amount that you gave last year, which is what we're going to assume if you don't let us know otherwise, but still let us know. You can use the QR code, which is around. You can see Mary, who's going to be sitting on this level right outside the sanctuary. She will answer all of your questions. You can talk to Steve. You can talk to Heidi. You can talk to me. Because those pledges matter. The budget is built on the needs and the possibilities that a congregation has, and it becomes real when people say, yes, this is what I love. This is what I want to take care of. Yeah, I'm hearing the train. Was that a signal that you and Paul had? I want to say one thing about the special congregational meeting tonight, because it's also about money. I hope you will come on Zoom if you can. Because this building, the possibility of having heat pumps to cool and heat this building, and the other large question of having a roof that doesn't have holes in it are the things that are on the agenda. And I found myself, as I was talking to Steve and Alan and other people about this, with a reflection I just wanted to share with you. Congregations do start where they weren't before. And it's a whole lot of work to make a congregation that doesn't exist happen. Starting with a small group of people, and then their friends, and then figuring out who's going to do the work, and then the building, and then the other building, and then the other building, and then the building. It's not a short process. And I have had the privilege of working with a couple of new-ish congregations, including this one. But I want to share with you my observation that it takes at least 50 years to kind of lay, most of the time, no, always, to lay the foundations of a congregation, including all of those things I talked about, and also figuring out how to manage not just the annual fundraising, but the expensive stuff that happens with the building, with the physical plant. And as congregations get older and have other kinds of funds, reserve funds or endowments which produce income, there are other possibilities, other possible ways of paying for those expensive things. And if you don't yet have those funds set up, or if they're not functioning yet enough, you need to do special meetings and special fundraising. And that's not in any way a failing. It's a normal thing. Probably nobody would ever think of starting a congregation if they actually understood how much it would take. But we're actually glad that people don't know, because otherwise it wouldn't happen. So, what is life in community for? Religious community and other communities too. I believe that it's for empowering and encouraging and challenging one another to choose a good and bold future and present. Choosing to join forces with people of a community to make it happen. It's about being and becoming people who know how to love actively. Love ourselves and our beloveds, and not just those. People who love the world as a whole and in particular. I want to end with some of the words from the hymn that we just sang together. The poem is by Christina Georgina Rossetti. She wrote, "Sing hymns of love, that some who hear far off in pain may lend an ear, rise up and wonder and draw near. Lead lives of love, that others who behold your lives may kindle too with love and cast their lot with you." Alleluia. Alleluia.
Our last hymn is number 82, which I don't believe we have sung before. So I'll just invite the choir to sing the first verse for you once, and then we'll sing it again. All right, so we'll sing the first verse twice and just let the choir teach it to you first. Okay?
The closing words are by Judith Meyer. This is what we do with our faith. Live in this world knowing that we will lose each other, loving despite the hard bargain it demands of us, doing what we can so that truth may be safely lived, measuring our faith by the difference we have made, building up faith communities to continue after we are gone. Go in peace. But sing first.
Love.